And turning now to President Biden's 2024 re-election bid, we hear what some voters across the country had to say about the news. And today's Jeremy Sandberg reports.
I wouldn't be standing here.
President Biden says he wants to finish the job in his 2024 re-election launch video on Tuesday. Some Seattle residents aren't sure that's a good idea.
I don't think he has the capacity to finish this term, I wish. Sorry. And I think that that's not a great idea. I don't think he's going to be successful.
I'm getting to be close to 50 myself and slowing down a bit, so I can only imagine what it must be like for an older gentleman like that to take on such a big project. It's admirable, but I don't know if he might be my first choice in a situation like that.
Honestly, like the fact that he's older. I feel like old people should get more respect, and as far as like an old competent person, that's awesome. But is he an old competent person? Not to me, so it does worry me that he'll be in charge.
Those in the nation's capital had similar concerns when asked about Biden.
I'm a little bothered. He's a little old, and if I can't join the Army at 58, I don't think he should run the country at 80. And how old will he be? 84? It's too old. Definitely too old.
I feel like he's too old.
The president and the Congress, they focus on world issues instead of homeland issues like they should. That should come first, and then world issues. You got to focus on America first.
Reactions to Biden's news were mixed down in Texas.
For me, it's a good choice. Yes, I am happy with it.
I feel like he's sold America to China.
I feel like he has the best chance of beating Trump, so I'm pleased that he's running, but also I feel like we need someone new and fresh.
Biden's age has become a resounding concern for many.
Honestly, I think he's a little old for that because, I mean, he is 80 years old. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the span of that time.
He's too old. He needs to hang it up. He was too old before, and he's way too old now. We need someone younger.
Many voters in Arizona echoed that sentiment.
I'm worried that if we continue to have a very aged group of people running our country, that we're missing out on huge opportunities for really positive change.
I really do hope that we get younger candidates.
No, we don't need Biden, man. I think we should vote Trump back in, man. He might say a lot of crazy things out of his mouth, but he kept the money flowing for the people that's less fortunate.
A Reuters Ipsos poll on Monday found the majority of registered voters that were surveyed don't want either Biden or Trump to run again. Biden came in with a 43% approval rating. Trump had 38%. Monday's poll concluded 44% of Democrats feel Biden is too old for the job. 35% of Republicans in the poll felt former President Trump is too old. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And now for some analysis on President Biden's campaign and the issues he faces. We speak live with Democratic strategist and civil rights attorney Robert Patillo. Robert, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Biden's made it official that he's going for a second term. The top job is very demanding, and critics are pointing to mental decline over these gaffes. Do you think Biden will be able to overcome this?
He's always been able to overcome this. You can go back to Biden's 1988 campaign, and people talked about his gaffes and the plagiarism scandal and other things going back decades. You have to go by President Biden's record, and just on the numbers, the first 3 years of his administration have been some of the most consequential 3 years in any presidential administration in the United States history. He can go toe-to-toe with FDR on many of his achievements. I think President Biden's going to put his re-election case based upon competency, pushing through a $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill when every other administration had been having infrastructure weak for the last 20 years. Being able to pass the biggest investment in climate change in U.S. history with the Inflation Reduction Act. His ability to work on a bipartisan basis for a $3.5 trillion omnibus spending bill. President Biden is going to put his record before the American people and say, judge me by that, not based on sound bites.
Giving us a little historical context into these gaffes here. Now, NBC News poll says 58% of Americans disapprove of the job that Biden's doing on the economy. Do you think inflation will prevent him from winning, or will he be able to turn this around, and how?
Oh, I think President Biden needs a communications team that's able to articulate exactly what is happening economically to the rest of the world. If you compare American prices right now to 2019, of course they're higher than they were then. However, you can compare them globally. American inflation is 1/3 of what we're seeing in Europe. It's a quarter of what we're seeing in Asia. Indeed, the policies the Biden administration put in place, particularly through Secretary Powell, is very similar to what Paul Volcker did in 1980 when it came to breaking the back of double-digit stagflation, raising interest rates, stabilizing the economic market, preventing a run on the banks in the last several weeks when we saw Seagate and Silicon Valley Bank go out of business, lowering unemployment to the lowest rates that we've seen in American history. President Biden is going to make the case to the American people that even though inflation is high, that is due to international pressures being put on all economies worldwide, and America is doing far better than our brothers and sisters in Europe, Asia, and much of the rest of the developed world.
And President Biden's comms team has played a big role in this, for better or for worse. Now, Biden has framed his campaign as a question whether Americans will have more rights or fewer. Critics point to the Constitution and they say he's taken away guns from law-abiding gun owners and law-abiding citizens, and also that he's allegedly pressuring social media companies to censor misinformation or what could be. But he has pushed to preserve Social Security and keep access to abortion. So what are your thoughts here?
Well, I think President Biden is going to make a very clear contrast that in the last several weeks, he's made him and Secretary Blinken have negotiated with the Philippines to open new U.S. bases in the South China Sea, pushing back on China's expansion in that region. That they've worked with the embassy in Sudan to evacuate Americans from that war-torn region. That he's held together the NATO alliance and indeed has increased global military spending to $2.2 trillion worldwide, something that we've been trying to get NATO to do for the last 70 years. And in the meantime, Republicans are chasing Mickey Mouse around, trying to stop him from making the kids gay. They're trying to force trans athletes out of schools. They're working really hard to ensure that the Bud Light doesn't put any transgenders on the cans. It's a very clear contrast between a competent president who's trying to get things done for the American people versus what is ostensibly a reality show parading as a political party.
War in Ukraine, all eyes on the Taiwan Strait. Definitely a lot of topics to cover here. Democratic strategist, civil rights attorney, Robert Patillo, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Next, an exclusive interview. A woman from mainland China tells NTD about her harrowing journey migrating to the U.S. and crossing the Texas-Mexico border.
A single mom using the alias Sophie and her 9-year-old son survived a month of deadly circumstances getting to the Texas-Mexico border. They came all the way from Shandong province, China, hoping to find freedom.
Sometimes it was too difficult along the route, but thinking about the Communist Party, I absolutely couldn't go back.
According to Sophie, Chinese people call this process zhou, or walk the route in English, which means being smuggled into the U.S. through Central and South America and Mexico. She says on the road, gangs or even the police would target Chinese people to search for money, sometimes stripping them naked.
When we arrived by bus, we were told a good contact would pick us up, but it turned out it was members of a gang who picked us up. It was nighttime and we walked through the street to a hut. People there began to check our identities. Later, we were led through streets and alleys, and we arrived at another place. They began to check our luggage and ordered us to hand over our money and our mobile phones. He said he would arrange for us to cross the river the next day, but the next day he told us very seriously that each person still owed $1,800. He said that if I didn't pay, he would take my son away and I would never see him again. And then he pulled out a gun and threatened me.
Sophie says all the migrants suffered inhumane conditions. Within 20 days, they traveled across the ocean, up the mountains, and through the fields and the jungle before getting to a Mexican city near the Rio Grande River.
In a small room of 20 square feet, 3 or 4 of us Chinese were locked up, along with South Americans, adults, and children. A dozen people were crowded into this room. There were no bed. You could only sleep on the floor. We couldn't leave and we couldn't turn on the lights. We were locked in this small dark room, without windows, waiting for news. Later, we paid the ransom money and the cost of crossing the river before he let us out.
After crossing the river, Sophie, her son, and others met Border Patrol agents who then registered their information. She says not everyone was as lucky, and many others died along the route.
When I decided to come out of China, I thought I'd rather lose my life on the road because the Communist Party makes life unbearable in this evil regime. The CCP treats us like livestock. At any time it wants your money, wants your parts, your organs. It can pull one out and cut it off, then empty your bank account. People are erased like numbers. It's terrible. You have no freedom. You have no freedom of speech, no freedom of belief, no basic right of life.
Sophie hopes that being in the U.S. and free of the CCP's control, her son can grow up happy. She is looking for legal help to stay in the U.S. and start a new life. Reported by Brenda Chen, NTD News.
A House Judiciary Subcommittee will hold a hearing today at 3 p.m. about the exploitation of unaccompanied immigrant children. The hearing will examine the surge of unaccompanied minors at the southwest border and how border policies enable the exploitation of those children.
Florida is preparing to pass a sweeping immigration bill backed by Governor Ron DeSantis. It would give millions of dollars to his controversial program of transporting illegal immigrants to Democratic areas. NTD's Daniel Monahan brings us more.
SB 1617 was filed on Sunday night following weeks of negotiations between House and Senate Republicans. It is expected to pass the Republican-controlled legislature this week. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis introduced the legislation in February.
We're fighting back on behalf of Floridians.
If passed, it would give $12 million to the DeSantis Illegal Immigrant Flight Program. The program made headlines in September after the administration paid to fly 50 illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. The bill would also bar local governments in Florida from funding ID cards for people with no proof of citizenship, invalidate a driver's license issued by another state to someone who cannot prove their citizenship, require hospitals that accept Medicaid to record a patient's citizenship status on intake forms, prohibit undocumented law school graduates from taking the Florida bar.
They're letting illegal aliens become licensed attorneys in Florida. It's like, how could you be violating the law and then be practicing the law?
The bill would also increase penalties for human trafficking-related offenses to a second-degree felony and require anyone in custody of law enforcement with an immigration retainer to submit a DNA sample. Supporters say dealing with the issue of illegal immigration is critical. They believe such measures will improve safety in Florida and strengthen the economy. Opponents say the bill is inhumane and unconstitutional and will waste taxpayer money. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.